Hi everybody, today we're going to talk about saving a whole bunch of money and doing your own brakes. Stay tuned. Alright guys, like I said, I'm going to talk to you about doing your own brakes. I'm not going to get into the specifics of doing brakes necessarily because every car is a little bit different. There's a whole bunch of instructions on YouTube, probably for your exact car. Obviously I don't own hundreds of different cars, so I can't get into the specifics of everyone. Every brake job is pretty, I should say there's similarities with every brake job, and I'll cover those, and I'll cover where people get stuck and why people think they can't do it themselves, which is really not true. It's really not that hard. I bought my brakes from a website called buybrakes.com. I wanted to get StopTech brakes for my car, and they were having a sale. You can get them from Amazon, you can get them from Rock Auto, you can go down to your local Pep Boys or any auto parts store and get brakes for your car, I'm sure. If you're looking for something particular though, you're gonna have to do a little bit more research. I prefer StopTech brakes. I just have had good success with them. I don't mind Accabono, I don't mind Hawk, I don't mind EBC, but I just like StopTech brakes. PowerStop is also another good company, so you can Google those and get a whole bunch of different reviews and see what people like. Me personally though, I just like StopTech brakes, and that's what I went with. Anyhow, me purchasing my own brakes is gonna save me about $800 on this vehicle on my wife's Q5. The dealer wants just to do the rear brakes a little over $1,000, which is ridiculous. So Audi won't let you reuse your rotors, they won't let you cut the rotors. I don't really recommend cutting rotors either. Rotors really aren't that expensive. Anyhow, Audi wants a ton of money for the rotors and a ton of money for their brake pads, and then even more money for their labor. I think this job is going to take me a little over 2 hours, not that much of my time, and I'm going to save about $700 or $800 doing it. Your car may be more or less that you're saving, and I'm going to talk to you when we get into it a little bit about maybe some obstacles where you don't want to do your own brakes, and actually I'll just cover that right now. So this car, I'm going to do the rear brakes. I've already done the front brakes not too long ago. Now it's time to do the rear brakes. This car is an electronic e-brake that causes a whole bunch of other issues. I actually need a cable that interfaces with the car to get that e-brake to retract. You don't want to push an electronic e-brake in. It's got its own motor holding it in, and you could risk stripping that motor and causing a whole bunch more damage. There's nothing electronic on the front of the car though, so I was able to do the front of the car without any extra equipment or cables. So do a little research on your own car. If you have an electronic e-brake, you might be able to get a cable like I did to be able to do it yourself. That adds into your cost though. I own a couple Audis, so I already spent the money on the cable. But do a little research on that and see if you can actually do the job with the equipment that you have. Anyhow, let me get this thing jacked up. All right, so first things first, you jack up the car, use a jack stand for your safety. That's what's right next to the jack. Always recommend using a jack stand because these hydraulic jacks can fail, don't often fail, but they can. You don't want to be under the car when it happens. So, first area where most people get stuck is to get the rotor off. Almost every car has one of these screws. The purpose for this screw is to hold the rotor on when they're assembling the car. They don't put cars together how we may think they do. They put them on assembly lines. This whole axle probably gets built and the rotor gets put on well before it gets put on the car. So they use this screw to hold it in. This screw serves no purpose to the braking system at all. It only helps during assembly of the car. You don't need it. It's normally rusted in, very hard to get out. What I do is I drill it out. You just take a regular small drill bit, start drilling it out. Eventually the head will break off of it, pieces will fall out. That's where I start. If you can't get this screw out, you're not gonna get very far on the brake job. While I'm doing that, first thing that I do before I do that is I use penetrating oil on the bolts that I need to release to do the brakes. Like I said, almost every car is going to be the same. These bolts on the very top, there's two. There's one here, and there's going to be one right there. I'm sorry, right back here. You can see it there in the video on the bottom part. I use penetrating oil on those. To get this rotor off, you're gonna have to take the whole caliper bracket off. So this gets the caliper off to get to the brake pads. Then to get to the rotor, you need to get this big bracket off here. And that bigger screw right here, you need to get to, and there's one on the bottom. So I use penetrating oil on those. Type of penetrating oil that I'm gonna use is Liquid Wrench. You can find this in any auto parts store. You can even find it in Home Depot and Lowe's. Great product. It's going to save you some time. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to draw out this screw. I'll be back with you in a couple minutes. All right, so I'm going to cover a couple things that you may encounter that aren't a problem at all, but I just want you to know about. I removed the caliper. The brake pads stayed in the carrier. So as my son will move in to show you here, the brake pads are in the caliper still. All I gotta do is take a screwdriver, put that in there, shimmy them out, and that one will drop out. Same thing with the other one. The other thing I wanted to discuss was getting out these carrier bolts can be tough. It's all about leverage. If you can get a longer bar in here, great. I don't have the room to do that, so I use a rubber mallet, and it's not hard at all. My son will try and film as best he can. Make sure it's on the screw. Give it a few good whacks. The tool fell out because this bolt broke loose. Get back on there. Give it a couple more whacks. Okay, so we have the caliper off, we have the caliper carrier off, we're ready to take off the rotor. This is where a lot of people get stuck again. The rotor won't just pop off. I've removed the screw. Problem is that the rotor heats up and cools and heats up and cools, and we get road salt and grime, and the rotor gets stuck on the hub. It's not a big deal, it's frustrating though. What I do is I hit near here all around with a solid hammer. I do that maybe 5 or 6 times, and then I take my rubber mallet and I hit near the edges of the rotor. And when I say hit, I mean I really hit it. You gotta hit it really hard. And eventually it'll break free. It's common, you didn't do something wrong. If you're hearing it stuck, it may take you a solid 5 minutes of hitting it with a hammer. Eventually it'll come off though. So it's just one of the things that you have to do with brakes. Once you get it off, take either a wire brush, a little bit of sandpaper, and get all this extra grime off the hub. Your new rotor will go on much easier. So I'm gonna get to hammering. As you can see, a whole bunch of stuff falls out of the rotor. That's just grime and stuff, and that's fine. It's normal. It pops off. All right, so you got the caliper off, you got the brake pads out, you got the rotor off now. Now you're gonna clean stuff up. Get a can of brake cleaner. You can get it from Walmart, auto parts store, wherever you want to get it from. A lot of places have it. And don't be afraid to be liberal with it. I mean, you got to remember that the car goes through water and all sorts of stuff. So most of the stuff is waterproof. You don't want to spray directly on any electronics, but you know, spray the hub. Like I said, I'm going to use a wire brush, and I'm going to clean off some of that gunk. your caliper, your carrier, where the brake pads go. Give that generous spray. I'm using a cardboard box, obviously you can see to catch stuff. Make sure you get that all cleaned up. And your caliper itself, make sure you get that all cleaned up. You want to do this to get all the old brake dust out so you don't have squeaky brakes. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to bolt this back up. I'm not really going to show you how to put brake pads back in because every car is going to be a little bit different. I will talk about the brake caliper tool to compress the piston in just a second. I want to get this stuff cleaned up first. Okay guys, last couple tips here. When you're reinstalling your brake pads, you either want to use the lube that comes with the brake pads, or you can get something like this Brakes Quiet. Again, I got this at local auto parts store. They usually have it with caliper grease and stuff like that. You don't really need caliper grease as much anymore. Most of these are sealed units. This one is sealed. And I'm holding here a caliper tool. So the days using C-clamps to push your pistons back in is, I think, over. A lot of the companies, the pistons in the rotor, or I'm sorry, in the caliper rotate, and a C-clamp won't let it do that, and you end up causing a whole bunch of problems. So you can get a set like this at off Amazon. You can get it at Harbor Freight. A lot of your local auto parts store will rent a kit like this to you for a small amount of money. I think I spent maybe $40 for this kit. I do my brakes often, so it was a good investment for me. So make sure you're using the right tools. Like I said, C-clamps, I think those days are over. I don't recommend using a C-clamp anymore for your brakes. So I'm going to use this tool. I'm going to push the piston back in the caliper. I'm going to put the rotor back on. I'm going to put the brake pads in, put the caliper on. I'm going to button this thing up. So I'm probably taking a couple shots as I'm going through putting stuff on. Thanks for joining me again. If you find this video helpful, please hit the like button. Also hit the subscribe button for me. I'm trying to build my channel. I won't just be doing automotive stuff. I won't just be doing home improvement stuff. I had a YouTube TV versus Hulu Live TV video the other day. I'll talk about just stuff that comes up in life, stuff to save you money, make your life a little bit easier, just general stuff that we can do to improve our families' lives, save some money, and you know, that's the name of the game right there. Thanks for joining me. I'll be back in a few minutes. Thank you. So one thing that I forgot to mention is that if you are replacing your rotors with new ones, they come with an oil on them to keep them from rusting in shipping. So when you get them delivered, they're not all rusted. Anyhow, you got to remove that oil, or else it's going to be harder to bed in your brakes. So you want to hit this with brake cleaner also. Use a paper towel and wipe it off. I just didn't want to forget that, and it's kind of an important step. It's not mind-blowing if you didn't do it, but it does help. So I'm going to wrap this up, and we'll be back in just a second for you. So that's it. Brakes are all put back on. Everything's fresh and new. You guys can do this. It's not rocket science. You just need a few basic tools. You can go rent some tools, but you guys can do this and you can save a lot of money. Like I said, doing this myself saved myself almost $700, and it's just a few hours out of my time. And again, you guys can do this. I want to thank you for joining me. Again, if you found this video useful, hit the like button, please subscribe. I think I'm going to produce a lot of useful content for you that will make you feel better about yourself, getting stuff done, doing it the right way. Hopefully not running into too many snags doing it. I find that most people don't do projects because they're afraid they're going to either break something or they're going to get stuck. And hopefully my videos will keep people from having that problem. I don't want anybody getting stuck, and I want people to feel like they can do things and they can take on jobs and they can save themselves some money. So again, thank you for joining me. I really like doing this stuff, and I really appreciate you guys being along for the journey. I'll see you soon.